This is the Urtopia Carbon Classic. Now, if this looks familiar, well, it should, because I recently reviewed the Carbon 1 ST, which is a sibling version of this bike, but that one had a focus on tech, things like ChatGPT integration with smart features, and that one had no throttle. And while many people liked that bike and Urtopia got some great feedback, they learned in that feedback that there's a whole group of buyers who don't want the tech's-heavy display and do want a throttle. So Urtopia listened to the feedback and they delivered us this, the Carbon Classic, with the same great carbon fiber frame and fork, the same great low weight at just 41 pounds, but by adding in a full color display and giving you a throttle. So I've spent the last week with it and got some thoughts on what's changed and what stayed the same. So let's take a look at it in this deep dive of the new Urtopia Carbon Classic. So let's go ahead and go over the overview of the Urtopia Carbon Classic. So this is priced what we think will be about $17.99. This is a pre-production model, but when it comes out, we do expect that number to be right around $17.99 or that $1,800 price mark. Now, it's a commuter style bike, as you can see by just the sleek lines and the overall thinner tubing material and thinner tires with that flat bar up top. But this will ship to you as a Class 2 commuter, meaning it's limited to 20 miles an hour, but you can go into the display and very quickly bump that up to a max speed of 25 miles an hour. That works in both pedal assist and with the throttle, giving you a genuine Class 3 e-bike if you want that. Now, on top of it, they say this bike weighs 41 pounds. Obviously, I put that up on a scale when I got it, and it came out to right about 41 pounds as well. And then that sleek battery that fits in that down tube is pretty lightweight. It's only a little over 5 pounds, or about 5.5 pounds altogether, for that total of 41 pounds, the way you see the bike, including with the fenders right now. Now, in terms of frame sizing and colors, this is a size large, and I'll go over some numbers of that frame in just a second, but just know that they will be releasing this in 3 frame sizes, so you'll get a small, a medium, and a large, and it fits a really wide range from 5'3" on the low end all the way up to 6'5" on the top end, giving almost everybody something that should work for them fit-wise with this Carbon Classic bike. Now, frame colors-wise, I only know of 2 colors so far, and one of those is obviously this matte black, and the other one is a matte cream or a matte off-white color. Pretty simple color schemes setups, but black and white can't really go wrong, and I personally really am a fan of matte colors just in general. Now, when it comes to the geometry numbers for this specific large frame, the wheelbase from front hub to rear hub or vice versa is about 44 inches. The top tube is about, the standover height of the top tube is about 33 inches. You have about a 20-inch reach up top. You have 6 inches of adjustability here in the seat post. And the max payload capacity for this bike is 240 pounds. Now, one thing I really like about this bike was the tire and wheel choices. Many times we see 26s or 27.5s, especially on this style of bike, but they went with a true 700C setup like you see on genuine gravel bikes or modern road bikes. That 700C is going to give you that larger, almost 29er feel when you're riding the bike. And then they equipped it with Kenda 700 by 40C tires. These tires have a nice kind of mild tread down the center for fast rolling, but on the edges have some raised knobbies for traction in corners. But the coolest thing here is they left room in the frame clearance for up to a 45C, so you could run a 700 by 40 all the way up to a 700 by 45, and that extra room is going to give you a more cushy ride. You'll be able to air down a little bit and just get a little bit of comfort extra out of the tires, because as you see, we have a rigid frame, so no suspension seat post, so you have nothing else to rely on cushioning wise other than airing down those tires just a bit to take the edge off. And frankly, riding this bike all week, it's already a very smooth bike, but if you throw on 45s and air down just a hair, it's going to get that much smoother, which is what I would do if I owned the bike, but I'm also a big bike nerd in general, so just know that you can air down and you can go bigger on the tires if you wanted to. Now, when it comes to things like accessories, both included and not included, this will ship right now with the fenders included for free, both front to back, and the ability to carry racks on the rear rack here. Now, there's mounting places for it, but it's sold separately by the company. If you want to buy that, you can always buy that. Also up front, if you notice on that front fork here, that is a carbon fiber fork, and it's the bike is a carbon fiber frame, but on that fork we have 3 mounting points on each side, which really allows you to use those bike pack mounts for things like bike packing trips or just more city commuting, downtown rides where you want all your gear for work and you need places to put it. You don't have to rely on sticking it all in a backpack or on a rear rack. You have lots of mounting points, including 2 more on the down tube here, to just let you kind of rig this out the way you need to for whatever your daily grind has in store for you. Now when it comes to lighting, we do have a 30 lux adjustable headlight up front, and then on the rear tail light we have this tail light built into the rear fender, and it has a not only a tail light feature. When the lights are on, it will glow a solid glow, but when you brake, use the brake levers, you'll also get that highlight feature to give you a full brake light feature on this bike. So it's really set up for packing, getting to and from work, having all your gear, and you have all the nice creature comforts like fenders and lighting front to back to kind of just keep you seen in lower light conditions. All right, let's talk about the power delivery on the Urtopia Carbon Classic, because that's an area this bike really does shine. We have a 350 watt rear hub motor. Now it can peak at up to 750 watts and it puts out 45 Newton meters of torque. And I can already hear people at home saying, well, that's not a lot of power. I want a 750 or a 1000 and I want 100 Newton meters of torque. But really it all comes down to what's relative for the bike you're riding. This bike does not weigh 90 pounds. It does not have massive 4 or 5 inch wide tires that you have to roll down the road where it needs all that extra torque just to get going. This is a 40-pound bike. It's barely heavier than most mountain bikes you see off the shelf that are not even e-bikes. This is a light bike, and it doesn't need a ton of power to get you going and get you going quickly. And I think this 350 watt motor with 45 Newton meters of torque, you'll see when we go on a ride, it's nice, smooth, it can be peppy when you need it to, it can get up hills when you need it to, and it's not a bunch of excess extra watts and torque numbers that look great on paper, but you don't really need on a bike like this. Now this has 5 levels of pedal assist. You have Eco, Tour, Smart mode, which kind of does some regulating of that PAS as you ride based on how you're riding. And then you have your 2 kind of faster modes, which are your turbo and finally your boost mode. Now this has a torque sensor and it's a very smooth, very quiet setup. This is really on par with bikes that I praise often, like the Ride 1-Up, Roadster V3. This is a very similar setup. The bike just rides silently, smoothly. You never feel or hear the torque sensor. Everything just does its job the way it should, and it feels very natural and very intuitive. Definitely a fan of this setup, and I don't always say that about bikes. This one just really did a good job. Now in terms of the battery up front here, so this bike will come with a set of keys that you can use to lock and remove this battery as you need to, whether that be for security or for storage purposes. So I'm going to put the key in right here. I'm going to drop this battery out. I'm going to turn that wheel a little bit to get it out. And so this slim guy here is a 36 volt battery, and it's rated at 9.8 amp hours, giving us a total of 352.8 watt hours. Now this is also made to UL 2271 fire safety standards, and the bike is made to UL 2849 standards, so they did invest in that just for that extra peace of mind when you're plugging these in your garage and leaving them unattended. The last thing you want is something that you don't trust to just do its job and not give you any headaches. So it's nice to see that those UL standards are met. Now, this weighs, like I said, only about 5 pounds, a little over 5 pounds, and you're probably thinking, what kind of mileage could you get out of this little battery and this little motor? Well, they say you can get up to 80, and when I say they, that means Urtopia. Now, they claim and they clarify that that's based on a 180-pound rider on eco mode only, using a flat course, which is very ideal conditions. And while I am 180 pounds, I didn't really meet the other conditions, because the test course that I use here is a city bike path. So I do stop, I do kind of turn, I do go up some mild hills here and there. And in full disclosure, when I did the eco range test, so that lowest possible assistance, I bumped up that pedal assist once or twice on hills every time I hit a hill, because eco mode, while it's great on flats, it's not very punchy on hills. And just to keep my momentum going, I would always bump up that pedal assist or maybe tap the throttle here and there during that range test, which does reduce numbers a little bit. But with that said, what numbers did I get? So like they say up to 80 miles. So I put it first on maximum mode using turbo mode, going all out 25 miles an hour, and I got 26 miles, which is a pretty good distance for going that fast. Then I recharged it, gave the bike a rest, and did another range test, and this one was on eco mode, so that bare minimum mode. And like I said, great on flats, but on hills I found myself wanting to go up 1 or 2 PAS levels or tapping the throttle, so I didn't use the full efficiency of eco mode, but I still was able to cover 57 miles. And that leads me to believe that if I stuck to their strict flat course and stuck it in eco mode, I'd certainly be somewhere in that 60 plus miles. I can only guess how far up I would go, but it does lead me to believe you can get very close to that 60 to 70 miles. I just wasn't able to touch the 80 that they advertise, but all in all, I got really nice range numbers out of this. Now to put this battery back, I'm gonna turn that wheel one more time to make some room for it. And then as you see, you just pop in the bottom first, and the top clips right in, and you're good to go. All right, in terms of components on the Urtopia Carbon Classic, so back here we have an 8-speed drivetrain, and that's made up of a Shimano Acera rear derailleur, an 8-speed derailleur, and trigger shifters up top with a window. Now the cassette that's back here is an 11 to 40 tooth cassette with a Shimano Hyperglide hub drive, and then a 44 tooth chainring up front that has a nice one-sided chain guard there on the crankset. Now, speaking of the cranks, they are 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and you do have some composite pedals or plastic pedals that are included with the bike that also have some nice traction studs and reflectors for any low visibility lighting. Now, moving up here to the saddle, this is a Urtopia branded saddle. It's a pretty standard saddle. It feels fine to me. The seat post itself is an alloy 30.9 millimeter as far as the diameter on this, and the adjustability is done through a quick release, or not through a quick release, but through an Allen key head here. So you'll need to have an Allen key either on your toolkit if you want to adjust your saddle on the go, or just do it before you leave the house, because there's no quick release lever to just do quick up and down adjustments while you're out on the bike. Now, moving up front here, we have no suspension on this. It's a fully rigid frame. So we do have here in the cockpit, we have an alloy aluminum handlebar, and this is 680 millimeters wide, and it does have a slight rise and slight sweep back to it. On both ends, we have ergonomic lock-on rubber grips. We have Tektro brake levers that do have a small adjustability for the reach, so you can dial in a fit that works for your finger length. And both of these have E-cutoff sensors, so if you're using motor power and you even touch the brakes whatsoever, it will kill that power to the motor so you can have a better control of your stop, especially a hurried stop or a panic stop. You definitely don't want to be fighting the motor, and that's why it's nice to have those E-cutoff sensors in place. And again, here on the right side, we have the trigger shifters with the window. We have the new push throttle. And on the left side, we have a bell and the PAS control buttons that work the color display. So let's take a closer look at the display and talk about some of its features. All right, so this is the new color display on the Urtopia Carbon Classic. If you remember, the other version has that dot matrix style display. This is a true standard e-bike display with full color readouts. It's nice and easy to read. It's got good contrast, even in direct sunlight, and I never had any issues seeing this display, even with polarized sunglasses on. Now, over on the left side is going to be the PAS control buttons, which I'll be using to navigate through these menus. But let's just start with the home screen here. Up top in the center, we have the current time of day, which is not correct. It's not 3:20 a.m. But over here in the center, we have our speed in miles per hour, but you can change that to kilometers per hour, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. The right side has a battery bar indicator and a numerical percentage to give you both of those views on where the battery's at in its charge level. And then these dynamically will rotate your cadence as you're pedaling the bike and the motor's effort while you're pedaling. So as it's giving motor power, you'll see these dynamically move up, and as you pedal faster or slower, you'll see that dynamically move as well. Now below that here in the PAS selection, that's what that turbo is for. If we tab down, we'll see it's Boost, Smart, Tour, and Eco at the very bottom. And as I do that, you notice the range numbers change. So right now in Eco mode, it says at 93%, I can go 72 miles. When I bump that up to Tour, that goes to 44. Smart, that goes to 37. Boost, that goes to 32. And Turbo, that goes to 26, which, if you remember in my range results on Turbo, I got exactly 26 miles. So not a bad estimation from this 93% charge rate. Now at the bottom, we have some data screens. So we have our trip distance is currently at almost 95 miles, about 7 hours on the bike. And right now that range left is 26 miles. But if I want other data screens while I'm riding the bike, I can simply tap the M button on the bottom side of the display pad. So I'll tap it once and we'll get this screen, which gives us another view of the trip meter, but it also includes the odometer and then your average speed and your max speed while riding the bike. Tapping it again will give you motor power in watts, your average watts and your max watts. And then power analysis between rider and motor has been roughly a 33 to 66% split, with the motor doing the majority of the heavy lifting. Hitting it again will show us riding mode usage. So we spend most of the time in Eco, but we have been using Tour, Smart. Doesn't look like much boost at all. We go right to Turbo, which you'll see those two are very similar in their profiles of how they feel when you ride, so that makes sense. Tapping it again will take you back to the home screen, but there's also some advanced menus you can go into to see deeper settings and make some other tweaks. So the way we access that is by holding the M button, which takes us to the settings menu. And we can reset the trip meter from here. We can adjust the speed limit, which is what I was doing earlier when I went from that 20 to 25. You can see it's currently at 25. But if I wanted to lower it back to 20, I can go as low as 15 and say I wanted to leave it there for maybe one of my kids or friends riding the bike for the first time. If I want to leave it there, I just simply hold the M button and that locks that in place. So when we go back in, you can see it's set at 15 miles an hour. Now to go to the next setting, I'm going to hold this M button one more time. You can set a password to start the bike. So say you power on the bike, you're parked in a downtown area, you go inside a store, somebody walks up to it, they can't just power it on and ride away with assistance. They'll need to have that password to get that motor to actuate. Otherwise, they'll be stuck just riding it like an analog bike. And that's assuming you don't have a lock or anything else in place. Let's go back into those menus. So you can set the time in there. You can change the unit. That is where you can change between miles per hour and kilometers, or imperial and metric, but we'll just leave those the way they are. Brightness is on a scale of, I believe, 3 levels. Let's see that. Yeah, it's on level 3 right now, which is the brightest, but you can go to dimmer levels, but as you can see, that's not going to do us much good. So let's put that back on level 3, and then we'll hold M to save it in place. Auto sleep feature will allow you to set a distance, or excuse me, a time of how long the bike waits before shutting off once you stop using it. So if you were to just get off the bike and walk inside your house and forgot to turn it off, it currently would wait 5 minutes and then power itself down, but you could set it as much as 30 minutes, 5, 10, 20, and 30-minute increments, or you can turn it off altogether if you don't want that feature at all, but I'm just going to leave it on 5 minutes. Here you can assist the motor percentages at each level of pedal assist. This is a really cool motor tuning feature, so I'm going to go ahead and go into here and show you this. So it starts up at Eco, and as you can see, if I tap the up buttons, I can change how much power is being delivered in Eco mode, but I like having this more like gradual scale that it moves up, so I'm going to keep it the way it is. But you could basically, if you wanted to, you could make Eco go about as high up as you wanted to, including all the way up to 100%. But just for the sake of having levels, I'm going to keep everything at this kind of gradual rate. And so to go to the next one, you'll simply tap the M button again, and you can do that for each one and dial them in the way you want each one to behave. And then I'll just hold this M button to back out of here. Here is your walk speed. The walk feature, if you hold the walk assist button, that allows you to walk with the bike instead of using the weight of the bike. And you can adjust that speed based on how fast you want it to move. 3.5 miles, 3 miles, 2.5 miles an hour, or 2 miles an hour. So you have quite a few options in there, just depending on how fast you walk or how fast you want to deal with it while you're walking. And here is your light sensibility. This is basically an auto on or off feature of the light based on ambient light outside. You can turn that on or off. And then here you get your e-bike info. Say you're talking to support and they need to know like which motor serial number you have, or firmware, hardware, things like that. You can go in here and see that information. Wheel circumference is going to be currently set to the 700C that it has, so we're going to leave that alone and back out. And if we go to battery info, this is where you get like hardware version, firmware version, voltage, capacity, and charge cycles. So we'll back out of that. Go to controller info. It's going to be more of the same type of info. You get a hardware and firmware number. We'll back out and go to display. And again, hardware, firmware, and serial number for the display. So should you have any issues, this is where you would find that information to pass on to support. But I've had no issues with this at all. To back out of these settings, I'll simply keep holding that M button until it backs out to the home screen. All in all, it's been a really, really nice setup. Again, no trouble seeing this in any light conditions. And then one little nice addition here is they added a USB Type-C charging port to the base of the PAS control button. So if you have your phone mounted up here and you want to take a little bit of the charge from the bike and put it into your phone, you can do that, which is also a really nice feature. But all in all, a really nice setup. Now, they do say there's going to be an app pairing to this. I took a look in the manual. There's no documentation yet on how to pair it. And when I went into the app to try to just manually pair it, there was no way to do it yet for this model. So I think that will be coming before the bike is released. I just wasn't able to show you guys all the features it will have. I do know it's going to have GPS ride tracking, and even more importantly, the ability to do over-the-air updates, so you can get this bike updated, things like software and firmware, which is a really nice feature. You don't have to take it in. It can be done over the air at your home in a really quick sequence based on using the app. Unfortunately, I just don't have access to it yet, but do know that should you buy it down the road, that will be coming with this bike as well. All right, guys, we're out here on the Urtopia Carbon Classic, and just gonna throw it out there. This is becoming one of my new kind of go-to bikes here at work. There's a few that I love, the Ride One Up Roadster, the CF Racer. There's a couple that I really like, but this one's gonna go in the rotation of just kind of everyday get around town bikes. I love how sleek it is, how light it is, really smooth and quiet. Those are all things I like in an e-bike. I'm not a big fat tire, full speed ahead guy. I don't mind pedaling, and I like how quiet and sleek this bike is. But let's talk about riding position. So riding position on this is kind of a hybrid like you'd expect with a flat bar gravel or flat bar kind of commuter style bike that we have here. You're not fully slammed down, but you're also not fully upright either. It's kind of that hybrid middle of the road position. Now the motor is 350 watts, 36 volts. So it doesn't sound like a super strong system. 750 volts peaking, that helps. And then 45 Newton meters of torque. Now you may think that's not enough, but if you look at the weight of the bike, 40 pounds, and then you compare that to what bikes do get for torque when they're heavy, you know, an 80, 90 pound bike might have 100 Newton meters of torque, but it's an 80 or 90 pound bike. With 4-inch fat tires, it's got to roll. That rolling centrifugal mass is hard for a motor. So it needs all that extra juice. But this bike, I'm going up a hill right now, and I'm accelerating with no effort. I'm talking super light pedaling. I'm in turbo mode, full disclosure, but it's pretty much effortless. I mean, this thing is just shooting up the hill. So we're holding 20 going up the hill. I'm not pedaling hard at all. We are dropping just a little bit. But as you can see, no problem at all getting up the hill. Like even a little bit. It's just very lightweight and capable. I think it's a perfect balance for a commuter bike. Just enough power and pep to get you going up hills, give you a little speed, but not weighing the bike down with a crazy big battery motor. It's just a really nice combo. Urtopia's put a couple nice bikes together that we've had the chance to review, and I feel like they get a little bit better each time. So these brakes have been a little squeaky today. Let's see if they are when we do this stop test. I'm just gonna get going up over 20 miles an hour and then do a pretty quick stop. So right now I'm at 23, 24, 25, 3, 2, 1. So the braking is nice. It was a little noisy, but I could have just got any contaminant on the brake rotors messing around with this bike. It doesn't take much, even hand oils on a brake rotor or a brake pad can start some noises you don't want. But the braking power is nice. It doesn't take a whole lot of braking power to stop a 40-pound bike, so it doesn't need any big beefed up braking. It does have E cutoff sensors, so if you have you're using throttle and all of a sudden a kid runs out, you hit your brakes, it's going to kill that motor immediately and allow you to stop even quicker without fighting the motor, which is good. I do love all the mounting options we have on here. Like you have the front fork. So obviously the bike is carbon fiber, the fork is carbon fiber, but then you've got these pack mounts, 3 on each side of the fork, plus bottle cage mounts on the down tube. It's just fenders can be mounted on here. You can just really pack it out for your work week or just for little weekend adventure rides, gravel rides. And with these 700 by 40 tires with room for up to a 45, you can have a nice cushy ride on gravel with 45C tires and just air them down just a hair. I think the bike is really versatile. One of my favorite aspects of any e-bike, and it's pretty much front and center on this e-bike, is how quiet it is. You've been hearing me yap, but I don't think you've been hearing the bike much at all. And I'm on turbo mode, so it's working quote unquote hard, where most motors you're going to hear them when they're in their harder efforts, but you don't hear this one at all. Let me let's do the throttle. All right, so we're going to throttle nice and reserved. It's not punchy off the line, just kind of gets you up and going. We're at 14, 15 right now. 16, 17, 18, 19. And it looks like it's going to carry us all the way to 25 on the throttle, which is kind of going to be nice for some folks. So we're at 22 and a half, 23. And it looks like we're holding here about 23 on the throttle. Dipping back down between 22 and 23. So not fully 25, but you start pushing on the pedals just a little bit and you're going to be right up to 25 miles an hour like that. Just a really smooth, quiet commuter bike. I always call them commuter bikes. I don't even know if these technically are commuters. It's the same look though. Let me get around this couple. On your left. All right, let's go back and put this up on a stand and talk about this bike from more of an ownership standpoint. Things that may not be super obvious when you go to purchase the bike, and then when you get it home, you see it and you realize, oh, I didn't know this was going on or that was going on. So we try to cover those things now so you don't have a good informed decision. So let's go back, put that up on a rack and talk about it, and then we will wrap this review up. All right, so let's talk about the Carbon Classic, not so much from a review standpoint, pointing out all the features and specs, but let's talk about it more from your standpoint. You're the person who might be buying this, you see it on the website, you hear all the great things about it, but what if you get it home and there's some aspect that you couldn't see the pictures and I didn't bring up in the review that you just don't love about it? This is where I try to just bring up those things that are not as easily seen and as easy for you to detect at home, so you have as much info as you can before you make a decision. Now, I'm gonna start with some of the things that I just like on this that make the bike easier to work with and easier to service. I'm gonna start with its weight. It's a 41-pound bike the way it sits, which means this can fit on most bike racks without needing a special e-bike rated bike rack. This can be lifted by most people in a single person setup. You don't need to call a second or sometimes third person to lift this e-bike because it doesn't weigh 80 pounds, 90 pounds, or north of 100 pounds. It's just a very daily manageable weight that I think most people will appreciate. And if you don't like the idea of having a 100-pound bike, things like this become much, much more attractive. Now up here in the headset, you see all these spacers right here. This is a really cool feature that allows you to add or remove spacers based on where you want that height of that handlebar or that stack height. You can make those adjustments, micro adjustments in little 1/4 inch gaps at a time or 1/4 inch layers at a time with those spacers, and just kind of dial it into where you want it, make the bike fit you a little bit better so you don't have that fixed height there in the handlebar. That's a really nice feature that we don't see too often, but I was glad that they included it. And then finally, the last thing on here that I like about this is going to be the Shimano drivetrain with the Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. That means that anywhere but you take this bike shop wise, whether it's your local bike shop that doesn't touch e-bikes or your e-bike only bike shop, this is the type of parts, Tektro and Shimano, that any bike shop can just pull these off the shelf or have them within a day or two to work on your bike. It's not going to be any random obscure parts that they're not familiar with. Everything on here outside of the motor and controller is just basic bike maintenance stuff with nice name brand components. Now, some things that you should just be aware of, they're not necessarily good or bad things. They're just things that I would say you should just keep in your mind, and if it affects you, then that will help you make your decision. First thing is going to be the lack of any chainstay protection here. That will eventually start slapping, especially on little bumps and things like that. And over time, that will eat away at the matte finish on this chainstay and ultimately just chew into that paint and ultimately the carbon fiber, which is not something I would want. But the good news is you can pick up a cheap film strip from Amazon, protective film, put it there. It'll cost you just literally a few dollars, and you can have that protected for years to come with very little investment on your end. The other thing to be aware of is no seat post adjustments on the fly. So most bikes come with quick release levers so you can raise and lower that seat anytime you're riding the bike. You can just hop off, make that adjustment, get back on, see what feels good, and keep riding. This is a bike that you'll either need to figure that seat post height out before you start riding, figure it out at the house on your local street, and then you can go for your rides, or just keep a bike tool with you so you can make adjustments as you go, because you may get out 5-10 miles, realize it's not very comfortable, want to make a small adjustment, and if you don't have a tool with you, you're not going to be able to do that on the fly with this bike. And then the final thing also goes back to this headset here. We have the integrated cables. I do like the look of that. It keeps everything clean inside the headset, everything routed nice and clean. But what it will add a little bit of extra labor or headache if you do your own labor to access those cables, if you have to pull them for something and add new ones. Any kind of work that requires cable lengthening or shortening or replacing, probably going to add extra hour of labor or just a little bit more headache on your end if you do your own maintenance. But it's all easy to work on. Lots of high-end bikes have integrated headset cables. It's no big deal to your local bike shop. Just something from a cost perspective, you could expect to pay about an extra hour of labor for that little feature there. But at the end of the day, my own bikes have it. I like the look of it, and I'm willing to deal with it. Just something you should keep in mind if you're looking. Other than that, it's a really, really well done bike. I enjoy riding this bike. It's a fun bike, super quiet, super smooth, and I didn't have any other issues out of it. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Urtopia Carbon Classic. Again, this was the result of Urtopia listening to your feedback about the Carbon ST Pro, where people wanted the smart features and they wanted the no throttle setup, but then the whole other group of people who didn't want the smart features and they did want a throttle. Now we have the Carbon Classic to appease both groups of riders. Now, is it perfect? Of course it's not perfect. No e-bike ever is. This one doesn't go to a full 28 miles an hour. Remember, it's capped at 25 miles an hour, and it's not a huge speed demon going up very steep hills, but for anything outside of that, it does a really good job that I think most riders are going to appreciate just how smooth, how silent, and how easy this is to get around, especially at that 40-pound weight. Now, if I missed anything in this review that you want to know about the Carbon Classic, just drop it down below in the comments. I'll figure that information out for you and get it back to you personally so you can make the best decision you can. And until the next review comes out, guys, I'll see you out on the trail.